So cognition, that's the act of thinking, right? Recognizing your position in the world and interacting with the world and dealing with the world. And so it's what we use to acquire and use knowledge, in other words. And so we might also call it reasoning or judgment, and we use memory, we have imagination. So we employ all these various techniques in cognition. So association areas begin to play an important role now. And remember, those are when we're going to have those areas in the brain that probably make up the most real estate in the brain, where we're going to take all these different sensory inputs and make a coherent picture out of them. And so 75% of the brain tissue is estimated to be devoted to this association process. So how do we understand what cognition's all about, and then try to get into even the even bigger picture of what consciousness is? Well, you look at people that have deficits due to lesions or surgery or something that's happened to block or cause dysfunction of certain areas of the brain. So the parietal lobe, if we have lesions there, we know that they are associated with how we perceive stimuli. There's a particular neat case in parietal lobe association area that's associated with it called a contralateral neglect syndrome or alien hand syndrome, where you feel that this hand does not belong to you. And I'll try to remember to post this picture about somebody that had this and actually went to the lengths to have their limb surgically removed, but they feel like their limb is not a part of them. It feels foreign to them, and it can do strange things. It can seem to have a mind of its own. In the temporal lobe, we're often worried about identifying objects and very common objects, but in the temporal lobe, if we have damage there, this can be improperly processed, and this is called agnosia. So agnosia is the inability to recognize familiar objects. And then remember, in the temporal lobe, we also have the capability to recognize faces here, and so a particular disorder that's associated with the inability to recognize familiar faces is called prosopagnosia. And I would recommend going to the face-to-face PowerPoint slides to look at the videos that I have loaded in there for you to look through, or just go to YouTube and type in these terms and you'll get some really awesome videos that hopefully bring it home a little better than just chatting about it. When we talk about our frontal lobe, we know that's associated with planning and personality, and if you have a lesion here, you have an inability to execute your appropriate behavior. Memory implies that you can learn, that you can acquire new information, and that you can store and then adequately retrieve it when it is necessary. However, it's also important to forget information. There's cases of people that have perfect memories, and they have never forgotten anything, even the most trivial thing, like what they wore on March 28th, 1987. Right? They'll remember all that, and that's a problem when you can't forget correctly, because you do have limited memory capacity, and this will prevent the formation of new memories. There are two types of memories we should talk about. There's declarative, which is the inability to remember past events, and then there's procedural, which involves things that you should know and have in your mind no matter what stage of life you're in, and such as the ability to tie one's shoes. Now, when you have a deficit in memory, that's called amnesia. And there are two types, and that's of course a deficit in declarative memory. There are two types of amnesia: anterograde, which means you cannot remember anything or form any new memories, and then retrograde amnesia, where you forget past memories, and you can't recall things before the incident that made you lose your memory occurred. The hippocampus, as we mentioned before in this chapter, is intimately associated with the establishment of memory, short-term memory for a few seconds to maybe just a few minutes, and then it's instrumental in causing the formation of long-term memory, sending it to the right place in the brain and keeping that address so that you know where that information is stored at. The process of forming memories and then establishing them long term is called consolidation. Okay? And consolidation requires repetition. I hate to tell you this, but why do you have to repeat material over and over and over again? It's to adequately learn it and to keep that memory inside your brain tissue. Okay? And long-term memory is stored in many areas in the cerebral cortex, such as vocabulary. Memory of faces, which makes sense, is stored in the temporal lobe. When you talk about one's plans and social status and so forth, that's in your prefrontal cortex. Again, makes sense because that's the area that deals with personality, right? In the cerebellum, we know this is memory associated with throwing a ball, riding a bike. And in the amygdala is memories associated with what caused you fear so that you can automatically avoid those situations in the future. So what about emotion then? Since we just talked about the amygdala, we know that there are emotional feelings that arise and that we need to establish, and that's what the limbic system is all about, and it's going to interact quite a bit with the executive controller known as the prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex is our place where we do all expressions, your personality, and so forth. And the feelings are largely going to be generated from the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the hypothalamus. And these can be feelings of fear or love that are going to be associated with certain other components, and that will be associated in the primary association place in the brain called the prefrontal cortex. So the amygdala is going to receive inputs from sensory systems all over the body. In that case, it's going to have a role in food intake, sexual behavior, reactions to novel stimuli, so whether you'll be fearful of them, accepting of them. The output can then go to the hypothalamus that can then issue commands based on your homeostatic maintenance, based on safeguarding you, and can cause fight or flight responses, can cause rapid heart rate, right? Those kind of outputs that can happen, including causing you to vomit, your goosebumps to form, many of those properties. So the amygdala will also report to the prefrontal cortex that then again can corral the inappropriate messages, but then allow through the ones that are meant to deal with the situation at hand. So this comes about when we're able to express more deep-seated emotions like love, fear, and anger. So our behavior is largely shaped by interactions among stimuli, then how the various nuclei associated with those stimuli will respond, and then how the primary association area in the brain deals with that output